There comes a time in life where you no longer seek to escape suffering but to understand it. In this world we are taught to run from discomfort, from uncertainty, from pain. But the path to freedom does not begin with running. It begins with stopping. It begins with turning toward what you fear, what you avoid, what you despise. Suffering is not your enemy. It is your invitation, an invitation to awaken. When you suffer, you are being shown something, not as punishment, but as a lesson. But as long as you fight against it, you remain blind. The more you resist, the more it persists. You cannot destroy fire by cursing its heat. You must understand its nature. To accept suffering is not to surrender in defeat, but to surrender in awareness. You say, yes, this is what is. I feel this pain. I see this turmoil. I am not running anymore. From this place of acceptance, the suffering begins to transform, because now you are no longer its slave. You are the witness. In silence, you begin to see that pain is a messenger. It tells you where you are attached. It shows you what you cling to. And once you see, you can let go. You can release the chains that were always in your own hands. Inner freedom is not found in the absence of suffering. It is found in the presence of clarity. And clarity arises only when the mind is still and the heart no longer rejects what is. Let life break you open. Let pain burn through what is false in you. And when the smoke clears, what remains is unshakable. What remains is true, that not by force, not by escape, but by acceptance. Only those who pass through the fire without fear come out purified. Only those who bow to the storm walk away free. If you understand this, then suffering is no longer something to fear. It is something to honor, something to learn from, and in that sacred understanding, you are finally free that suffering is inevitable. It is an undeniable part of the human experience, touching every life in different forms: loss, pain, failure, disappointment, loneliness, and uncertainty. No matter how strong, wealthy, intelligent, or careful one is, suffering finds its way through. Trying to avoid it only leads to more inner conflict, because the very resistance to pain gives it more power. Life was never meant to be without hardship. The growth of a tree requires the storm. The sharpening of a blade requires friction. In the same way, the evolution of a soul requires struggle. When we begin to understand that suffering is not a mistake but a natural part of existence, our relationship with it changes. We stop asking, "Why me?" and instead begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" In that shift of awareness, suffering becomes less of a curse and more of a guide. It points to where we are still clinging. It exposes our fears, our illusions, and our attachments. Every moment of suffering reveals a deeper part of the self that needs attention, healing, or release. Avoiding pain keeps us in a cycle of fear and control. But embracing the fact that suffering is unavoidable allows us to live with more presence and courage. We stop running, we face what is, and in doing so, we build resilience. We begin to realize that suffering, while uncomfortable, is also a doorway to inner strength, wisdom, and transformation. Accepting its place in life does not make us weak. It makes us real, it makes us humble, and eventually it makes us free. For the one who no longer fears suffering becomes untouchable, anchored in something deeper than comfort, something eternal. Acceptance is not weakness. It is often misunderstood as giving up or giving in, but in truth, it is one of the highest forms of inner strength. To accept something doesn't mean you agree with it, like it, or wish for it to continue. It simply means you are willing to see reality as it is, without denial, resistance, or illusion. This act of seeing clearly, without the filters of ego or emotion, requires immense courage. It is far easier to complain, to blame, or to fight what is happening than to sit with it, breathe through it, and say, "This is what it is right now." When you accept, you are not surrendering your power, you are reclaiming it, because only from a place of true awareness can change begin. Denial keeps you stuck. Resistance keeps you blind, but acceptance opens the door to clarity, wisdom, and deliberate action. A calm mind makes better decisions. A quiet heart holds deeper strength, and both are born through acceptance. People often confuse acceptance with passivity. But there is nothing passive about facing pain head-on, about acknowledging the truth without running from it. In fact, many of the strongest individuals are those who've learned to accept life's harshest moments with grace and presence. They don't break because they don't pretend. They bend, they feel, and they rise. In accepting reality, you align with it. You stop wasting energy fighting what you cannot control and start using that energy to transform what you can. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. True power lies not in force, but in understanding. And a person who understands the value of acceptance stands unshaken in the face of change, grounded in a peace that no chaos can steal. Resistance creates more pain. When we resist what is happening in our lives, whether it's an emotion, a situation, or an experience, we build an invisible wall against reality, and that wall doesn't protect us, it imprisons us. Pain by itself is a natural part of life, but the mental struggle we add on top of it turns it into suffering. When you say, this shouldn't be happening, or I can't accept this, you are not only experiencing the pain, but you are also battling it with your thoughts, judgments, and expectations. So that internal war becomes heavier than the pain itself. The mind is constantly trying to control outcomes, avoid discomfort, and cling to what feels safe. But life is not built to obey our preferences. It flows with its own rhythm, often beyond our understanding. In moments of fear, loss, or uncertainty, resisting the experience makes the burden greater. Like trying to hold back a wave with your bare hands, the more you push, the more it crashes down on you. And yet, when you let go and allow the wave to pass through you, something remarkable happens. You feel lighter, freer, more aware. By softening into the moment, even if it's painful, we reduce the tension we carry. This does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It means choosing presence over struggle. It means recognizing that peace comes not from perfect circumstances, but from the space we create within ourselves to meet life honestly. Every time we resist, we add layers of suffering. Every time we accept, we peel them away. The pain may still be there, but it becomes cleaner, simpler, easier to understand. Resistance tightens the grip of suffering, surrender loosens it, and in that loosening, healing quietly begins. That awareness turns suffering into a teacher. Pain, when met unconsciously, only leads to confusion, bitterness, and fear. But the moment we bring awareness into our suffering, something begins to shift. We stop being victims of our pain and start becoming students of it. Instead of asking, "Oh, why is this happening to me?" we begin to ask, "What is this trying to show me?" That simple change in perspective transforms suffering from a curse into a mirror, one that reflects our attachments, fears, and hidden wounds. With awareness, we learn to observe our thoughts rather than be consumed by them. Too. We notice how we react, where we hold tension, what triggers our emotions. Suffering becomes a map, and awareness becomes the light that helps us read it. Every painful moment carries a message about what we're clinging to, what we haven't healed, or what we refuse to face. Without awareness, we miss these messages. We repeat the same cycles, wondering why life feels heavy and unfair. But once awareness is present, even the most difficult emotions become valuable. Anger shows us where we feel powerless. Grief teaches us the depths of our love. Fear reveals the parts of life we have yet to trust. Through this clarity, suffering becomes less about punishment and more about purification. It burns away what is false, what no longer serves, and what holds us back. This process requires patience and courage because awareness does not remove the pain, it reveals it fully. But in that honest seeing, the suffering becomes more bearable, more meaningful. We grow, we evolve, we begin to walk through pain, not as lost souls, but as awakened ones. And that is the silent power of awareness. It turns even our darkest moments into sacred lessons. Inner freedom lies in detachment, not in running away from life, but in learning to participate in it without being consumed by it. Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference, but it is not about caring less, it is about caring without clinging. When you are detached, you allow life to move as it will without letting its highs or lows disturb your center. You stop depending on external conditions for your peace. Whether things go according to your plan or fall apart, your sense of self remains untouched. True detachment means you can love deeply without becoming lost in that love. You can strive for success without being destroyed by failure. You can enjoy the pleasures of life without being trapped by desire. It is a state of internal balance where you no longer react blindly to every thought, feeling, or circumstance. In this space, there is clarity. there is stillness, and in that stillness you find freedom, not from the world but from the illusions that bind you to it. Attachment creates fear, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of not having or being enough. It makes your peace dependent on something fragile, something temporary. But when you detach, you begin to see that everything in life is passing. Nothing stays, not people, not moments, not emotions. And this is not something to fear. It is something to understand deeply, because when you truly accept impermanence, you stop grasping. And when you stop grasping, you start living. Detachment does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop drowning. You rise above the waves instead of being pulled under. And in that rising, in that inner spaciousness, there is a silent joy, calm, grounded, and unshakable. That is where inner freedom begins. Stillness is born through surrender. Not the surrender of weakness, but the surrender of resistance. In a world driven by control, speed, and constant striving, we often believe that peace comes from doing more, fixing everything, or holding on tighter. But true stillness, the kind that quiets the mind and opens the heart, only arises when we let go. When we stop fighting what is, stop demanding answers, and simply allow ourselves to be present with whatever arises. Surrender does not mean giving up on life. It means giving up the illusion that we can control it all. It is the act of opening our hands instead of clenching our fists. When you surrender, you stop pushing against the flow and begin to move with it. You stop judging the moment and begin to experience it. And in that release, something deep within you begins to settle. The thoughts slow down, the breath deepens, the noise fades. What remains is a silence that is not empty but full of clarity, presence, and truth. Stillness is not something you chase, it is something you uncover. It has always been there, hidden beneath the surface of your struggle. But it only reveals itself when you stop resisting the moment. Surrender allows the storm to pass without dragging you into it. It teaches you that you are not the chaos, but the awareness behind it. This stillness is not dull or lifeless. It is alive. It is the space where wisdom speaks and healing begins. It is where you reconnect with your inner self beyond the noise of ego and desire. Through surrender, you return to this space, not as an escape, but as your natural state. And in that stillness, you find peace that no outside force can shake. Discipline and presence are keys that unlock the path to inner transformation. Discipline is the structure that keeps you steady when emotions pull you in all directions. It is the quiet strength that helps you rise early when comfort tempts you to stay in bed. It is the decision to show up again and again, whether or not you feel like it. Without discipline, the mind becomes scattered, reactive, and weak. But with it, you become grounded, consistent, and powerful. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about alignment. It brings your actions into harmony with your purpose. Presence is equally vital. It is the ability to be fully here, right now, without drifting into regrets of the past or worries about the future. When you are present, you listen more deeply, move more consciously, and act with greater awareness. Presence sharpens the mind and softens the heart. It allows you to truly see what is without distortion. In presence, every moment becomes sacred because you are no longer somewhere else. You are fully alive in the now. Together, discipline and presence create a foundation for mastery. One without the other is incomplete. Discipline without presence becomes rigid and robotic. Presence without discipline becomes fleeting and unstable. But when they work together, they create a life of intention, clarity, and deep inner power. Discipline protects your time and energy. Presence helps you use them wisely. In the face of chaos, discipline keeps you rooted. In the noise of distraction, presence keeps you awake. When practiced daily, they reshape the way you think, speak, and act. They strip away the unnecessary and reveal what is essential. And in this simplicity, there is strength. In this awareness, there is freedom. Discipline and presence are not just habits. They are doorways to a higher way of living.